Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I want to begin by saying that I'm really proud of the fact that we as a synagogue have a Veterans Day Shabbat. If I'm being honest, I haven't worked in another synagogue that has a Shabbat specifically dedicated to recognizing its veterans, which means that today is just another reason that I love this shul. Many of you know that I grew up in Bell County, Texas, which supports Fort Hood. And many of you know that my grandfather was the Brigadier General of Fort Hood back in the 70s. So suffice to say, I come from a family of veterans, and my whole childhood was surrounded by veterans and active duty military. Growing up, it was an interesting childhood because so many of my friends lived on or around base. And sometimes I would get to know a kid only for their parents to get reassigned to another base somewhere around the world, and then they'd have to move away. It was also strange growing up in the shadow of my grandfather, who served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I remember as a teenager, I'd be out at the mall or at some other store, and an older veteran would recognize me or my father, and they would come over to me or to us, and they would start sharing war stories about my grandfather. I remember one time specifically at Blockbuster. This is a movie chain that used to rent something called VHS tapes. There was an older gentleman who heard my last name when I was checking out tapes at the counter, and he asked me, he said, "Are you related to my late grandfather?" And when I told him that I was, there in the store, he just began recollecting to me about a time that my grandfather had saved his life in Vietnam. And then, with tears rolling down his cheeks, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I'd go through hell for that old man." Now, this was a lovely sentiment, but I don't think that teenage Jonathan at Blockbuster really understood what it meant at the time. And perhaps because I've never served in the military, I'll never know what it meant. But for you veterans, you who know what it means to serve, I think you know what it meant. In addition to my grandfather serving as a general, his father, my great-grandfather, also served in the Army, and he was also a general, which means that both my grandparents and my great-grandparents are all buried here in San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston. And I make an effort on Veterans Day to visit all of their kevers, and I go and I put a stone on top. And I remember the sacrifice they made not only for their country, but also for my family, their families, which had to support them while they were not only at home, but also at war overseas. While I was visiting at the cemetery the other day, I thought of a quote that my dad used to tell me that his dad, my grandfather, would say to him as a kid all the time. My grandfather would say to him, quote, "I'd fight 1,000 wars if they'd send me instead of you." I'd fight 1,000 wars if they'd send me instead of you. To me, this is such a beautiful expression, not only of love, but of service. At the heart of it, it shows the love of a father for his child, but it also demonstrates the reason that so many of our servicemen and women serve, because they know who they are protecting at home. Our Parshat for the week, Chayei, Sara, echoes many of the themes I've spoken about this morning, specifically service, protecting one's family, and honoring loved ones that we've lost. Now, ironically, the words Chayei Sara, they literally translate to the life of Sarah, but the Parsha begins with her death. The Torah tells us that Abraham has to acquire a burial plot for his beloved wife Sara, which he does. But after this, our story takes an unexpected turn. Abraham decides that it's now time for his son Isaac to take a wife. However, Abraham doesn't want Isaac to marry any of the local girls in town. He wants a woman from his homeland to marry his son, but there's a problem. Abraham is originally from an area that was in ancient Mesopotamia, which is now in modern-day Turkey, a far, far distance from where he was living. And due to his age, it would have been impossible for him to journey that far away from home to procure a wife for Isaac. So instead, we're told he asks his servant, whom our tradition tells us is a man named Eliezer, he asks him if he will make the journey for him. Eliezer, being ever faithful to his master, agrees, and he puts his hand under Abraham's thigh, which is a biblical sign that he will fulfill the mission. You see, Eliezer knew what it meant to serve. Now, most of you know what happens next in the story. Eliezer arrives at a town called Nahor. He and his camels go to the local well to procure water after a long, long journey. And overwhelmed with anxiety, Eliezer prays to God to deliver to him the woman that Isaac will marry. And just moments after he finishes this prayer, a beautiful young maiden named Rebecca, she arrives at the well and she offers him water. But she doesn't stop there. She also offers to water all of his camels. And then she welcomes him to her father's house for the night to rest his feet after his long journey. You see, Rivka too knew what it meant to serve. And what's remarkable about this moment at the well is not simply that Rebecca is kind, it's that she sees someone in need and she steps forward. She doesn't wait to be asked. She doesn't calculate how tiring it might be to draw water for 10 thirsty camels. She simply acts. Because sometimes service is less about dramatic gestures and more about being willing to step in when someone else needs you. That's what makes Rebecca worthy of becoming the next matriarch of the Jewish people. But it's also what makes our veterans worthy of the honor that we give them today. Like Eliezer, like Rebecca, our veterans know what it means to answer a call, to sacrifice comfort for the sake of others, to walk toward a challenge and not away from it, to put duty before convenience and sometimes even before their own personal safety. And they know that service is not only what you do, but it's who you are. The Torah ends our story with a moment of deep healing. After Sarah's death, Isaac is inconsolable. He's adrift. But when Rebekah enters his life, the Torah tells us, Vayinachem Yitzchak, and Isaac was comforted. In other words, through this act of service, Eliezer's willingness to go and Rebekah's willingness to give, Isaac is comforted after his mother's death. Their service brings healing to someone who's grieving. And that too is what our veterans have done for our country. In moments of danger, they have brought security. In moments of fear, they've brought protection. In moments when the world felt uncertain, they became the steady hand that kept us safe. And just as Abraham and Isaac knew who they were protecting, our veterans have always known who they were protecting as well. Their families, their communities, this nation and the ideals that keep it strong. But today there is something, friends, that we must remember. Service is not a one-way street. Eliezer served Abraham, Rebekah served a stranger at a well, but Abraham also honored Sarah, and Isaac honored his mother as well. Our tradition teaches that we too must honor those who serve us. We do this with gratitude, with our presence, with our commitment to caring for veterans, not only on Veterans Day, but every single day of the year. Because our Torah is clear. When someone has protected you, you are obligated to protect them in return. So today on this Veterans Day Shabbat, we pause to say to our veterans, thank you. Thank you to those among us who have worn the uniform. Thank you to the families who have carried the weight of worry while your loved ones were away. Thank you for your courage, your sacrifice, and your willingness to serve. May God bless you, may God protect you, and may this community, your community, always honor you, support you, and stand by you. In the merit of Abraham's faith, in the strength of Rebekah's kindness, and in the legacy of all who have served, may we continue to be a shul that recognizes, celebrates, and cares for its veterans. And may this Veterans Day Shabbat be a reminder that true service, whether to God or to country, is always an act of love. Shabbat Shalom.